There we go. Hi, everybody online. Sorry, we were going through roll call and I completely missed touching the button. So Glenn Goldsmith, are you with us?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Wonderful, thank you. Larry Gross, are you with us?
Not anymore, which is weird.
Okay, I'll put a little note. All right, Jaron Hayes, Michael Hoyt, David McLaughlin, Ann Palbakar, Ken Progue, James Powell, Matthew Rowe,
Here.
Rodney Thomas, Tim Welsh, Alan Watkins,
Here.
Clinton Wells,
Here.
Kevin Wilkinson.
Here.
Is there anybody I missed? Because I printed off an old, good, okay. All right, so we have a quorum. The next item for agenda is the approval, it's the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved
Okay.
by Ruby Bravo.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 The agenda is approved. Approval of the January 10th CTAC minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? Oh,
It says under my name under attendance
okay.
in the beginning. I was here the whole meeting.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very
All right.
minor.
Oh, no,
Whatever.
we can do that.
I move to approve the minutes with that change.
Okay, wonderful. All right, second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll continue. All right, at this point in time, is there any members of the public that would like to provide comment? You'll have 3 minutes to speak before. Okay, hearing none, we'll go to our next item. VDOT transit reporter problem. Does any CTAC members have anything that they would like to bring up as an item of concern or note?
I have one thing. Alan Watkins here. Previously, I had talked about the intersection of Sanford Drive and Warrington Road. And one of the things that I had put into the works was to try to change a road sign. On one side, it wound up saying Sanford Drive appropriately, and the other side, it wound up being Sanford Road. It's a minor little thing, but actually it was causing some people to have delivery problems, and also they were concerned that if it was necessary for EMT to be able to find them, even though most people obviously use GPS, there were delivery problems. So I am happy to report that the Sanford Road sign that was wrong was replaced. However, it was replaced with the sign that says South Gateway Drive.
No way.
No.
No way.
And
Oh.
so,
Oh.
so if we can get that changed, that would be great.
Okay, thank you. Is that for me? We'll talk to Kyle, our residency engineer, first thing in the morning.
I think there's street name signs.
It's a very nice sign, but it's not the right road.
You'll find
We do, yeah, if it's a VDOT owned road.
Does anybody else have any items they wish to share? Yes.
Turn towards Hughes Home. I'm sorry, I don't remember the.
Dixon and Princess Anne.
Yes, is any updates about?
I have not heard anything new from the city.
Can you hear that online?
I was inquiring about was it the Dixon and
Princess Anne intersection.
intersection, that turn, it's dangerous, and just wonder if anybody heard anything about what we're gonna do about that intersection.
No,
Cannot see it. There's been a lot of drivers, FXB Go drivers that are saying that's a dangerous turn there because they can't see the traffic coming.
It's a sight distance issue.
Um,
Just a sight distance issue.
It's just, more like
With
obstruction.
the geometrics of it.
Just, all it really needs is a mirror, a traffic mirror, so you could see the traffic come on. There's an orange, like PT Cruiser looking thing sitting there.
Famous orange cruiser.
Yeah. Well, if he could just move down some, because also he's under 50 feet from that fire hydrant, which is also a violation. So if we could just get him to move down, so that way we can see him make the turn, because, we're really whipping around that corner, so we won't get hit.
Okay. Well, I'll follow up with Bassam Ahmed with the city, since we spoke previously with that one, but yeah, we can follow up again.
Thank
Okay. Any other items? Okay, we'll move on to the first action and discussion item. So if we could pull up the bylaws. So we have a weird little every year, FAMPO reaches out to its jurisdictions to just basically confirm its appointed members and to ensure that, hey, everybody who was appointed is the, they're actually appointed to the item. And an interesting item, Nicholas came back and was no longer appointed to the list. This was since corrected within the next Board of Supervisors meeting. But since he was also the chair, traditionally our bylaws currently state that if the chair is no longer able to serve, the chair automatically goes to the vice chair. We've done this process previously. However, in that case and in prior cases, if we know that somebody is intentionally removed, we get a letter from the jurisdiction that's saying so-and-so is no longer a member of that. We did not get that case with Nicholas, and so we actually have an issue. Essentially, which was with Tim Welsh, he wasn't going to be here for January or February's meeting, and we would actually have we would have like a continuality rule. So as the next person, as I get to chair the next ones, I was discussion with Tim, who was perfectly fine remaining vice chair throughout the remainder of this year, or until our year ends in June, that we developed a agreement that we were saying, let's amend our bylaws to say that if there's ever a disruption to any of the chairs that's temporary and corrected within 30 days, we just treat that as like a temporary absence. So the amendments to the bylaws, if we can scroll down to show what those would look like, we're just clarifying because we don't want an administrative thing that we do every year that could cause a disruption to how the chair is supposed to rotate between the jurisdictions would come into an issue. So we're amending it that it says when there's a permanent vacancy occurs with the chair or vice chair, not just that it's a 2-week section, that will give this body, the CTAC, the ability to affirm or reaffirm the chair or vice chair. So instead of automatically rotating based on a 2-week or 1 meeting disruption, that we can basically say, yes, that was a weird affirmation issue through our normal process of just verifying that folks are representatives from their jurisdictions, that we can, if there is something that, this county supervisors take action to correct within a short time, that we can just come and say, okay, yeah, we're not going to automatically default to the chairs rotating and have new elections. We're just going to say, no, we're comfortable with our current chairs or vice chairs, and we will just continue in the term as specified elsewhere in our bylaws. So, yes.
Okay, so a few questions. First of all, is there anywhere a definition of disruption? I think that needs to be addressed, so I'll just leave it there.
Okay.
Okay. The second thing would be, are you telling me that if you are a chair, you literally cannot miss a single meeting?
No. So
That's how I read that.
no. So in this case, we reached out to Stafford County to basically confirm who is their representatives from their county, and each jurisdiction kind of has a different way of doing it.
Sure.
When that was, Nicholas's name was dropped from that list of representatives, which is unusual because he's current or was the current acting chair at that point in time, and Stafford had vacancies. In fact, they actually counted somebody who was a former at-large member as a currently active thing. We reached out and say, what's going on? They're saying, no, that's what the supervisor voted for. But I think it was presented in some case of an error or oversight on some levels, that it was kind of a weird thing. I think with Nicholas talking with, I guess the supervisors reached out or discussed.
Yeah, I spoke to Supervisor Bonke
Yeah.
and Supervisor Diggs about this. Because there was still a vacancy
Mhm.
elsewhere within the 7 positions available to Stafford County. They just swapped me over. And because I had been, I was elected in June, I think it was June.
Mhm.
And because I was in the middle of a service term, and then also we had the issue of the vice chair was unable to take the chairmanship in January, and as you can see today, as the bylaws as they were written at the time would mean that we would have to elect a vice chair who
Hadn't been reappointed. is-
right.
Because to me, I understand if someone's not reappointed, but you're calling it a disruption and giving the perception that he just simply missed a meeting. Am I making sense?
Yes.
So you had a unique situation. It isn't that he just missed a meeting. It is
No,
because.
and we have that.
But right.
It was an administrative disruption because all of a sudden we had a letter stated from the county that they were no longer.
Right.
Without traditionally, what has previously occurred was the county notifies if they're going to remove somebody from one of the committees.
Right.
Because there's no time limit for how long folks serve. So they're on there until they are removed.
Right.
Or they resign. And so we didn't have an item where, and this even happened in a couple of our at-large where we needed to have members be.
Because I know counties don't always do their paperwork. I mean, like I have told you, Jaren hasn't been on this committee since last November when she retired from Auburn. She's not coming back, but you obviously still don't have an official notification from King George, so you still have to count her until you do.
I think the other aspect is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, the jurisdictional members don't have to be reappointed.
That's correct.
So because that's where the disruption aspect comes, is that I was not specifically removed, is that I was not.
Reappointed.
I wasn't reappointed, but there was no need for me to be reappointed according to FAMPO rules.
Yeah.
As a jurisdictional member.
But according to the supervisors of Stafford County, you were no longer a member?
Well, that's.
No, because if you technically were still a member, then I don't understand why there was an issue. If you're stating you did not officially need to be reappointed by the supervisors, so I will yield the table because obviously others have questions and comments as well.
Yes.
So that's my question on the matter, was this a vote that the Stafford board took to affirm a list of people that were on CTAC? Or was this an administrative error where a board clerk just sent you the?
It was so FAMPO reaches out and says, please affirm your members. The list that they affirmed was not completely accurate.
Okay, and they affirmed that at a board meeting.
And they, correct.
Okay.
And so,
All right.
But I mean, we discuss a permanent vacancy, but put permanent.
mhm.
Anything else is a temporary vacancy, and the vice chair
Steps.
acts in
Yes.
behalf of the chair until the chair comes back.
Correct.
Whether he, gets in the hospital for 3 weeks or he goes on a worldwide cruiser. I mean, I don't
Yes.
understand all this, why we have to say all this.
Yes, I agree.
So you're saying.
Vice chair's it.
Yes.
So the discussion that we had about this change is to make it good.
I think you're complicating it
Yeah.
very
Okay.
much so.
Okay, I mean, the goal here is to make it, not an issue in terms of, dotting the i's, crossing the t's about me retaking the chairmanship. If this committee has no problem with that,
When I think disruption, I think something that's more long-term, not just one meeting.
Well, that's what we're saying is that if a county board or this city council decides to, like, if they do it and take action to remedy it, treat it as a disruption, something that was kind of an unattended thing, rather than right now, as it stands, Tim would be the chair and it would move on. And since it starts from when the chair was removed, it would mean that he was removed in January. It's created a gray area, and that's what we're trying to solve, because in theory, if somebody wanted to contest that, it would be, Tim would be the chair.
That's what you need to address.
Can the other people have an opportunity? Sorry. This was a totally inadvertent non-reappointment because the supervisor involved was not aware that the current representative from his jurisdiction was the chairman. All right, if he had been aware of that, there would have been the opportunity for the person that he had chosen to have represented a different jurisdiction similar to the I also live in the George Washington district of Stafford County, but I am representing a different district. So we're making a bigger thing out of something that was an innocent mistake. Thank you.
The reason why I think folks are wanting to add some language to the bylaws. The bylaws state that if there is a vacancy on the chair, and this is Ian speaking, there's a vacancy in the chair, the vice chair automatically becomes the chair. That's the problem. So that's the language just trying to fix that problem. It's not trying to fix the problem of all this other stuff. It's that your bylaws state that the vice chair automatically becomes the chair. And in this case, everybody agrees, basically, unless someone wants to say to the contrary, that we don't want that. We just want to bring the guy back to finish his term because it's now been reinstated. But because the county official stated him, that wasn't a member even of CTAC for about. So it was like the problem is for 7 days. The problem is higher up in your bylaws where it says that the vice chair automatically becomes the chair. That then blocks this thing that you want to do, which is to just reinstate him till the end of his term of service, which is in a couple of months, right?
But we don't have
that
a, yeah.
in the bylaws blocks that option. So the new language, and I didn't draft it, and I'm not supporting it. I'm just saying that's why I think people want to put in this language, is because this bylaws state that the vice chair automatically becomes the chair, which doesn't make allowances for these unusual things that are.
Once we put, when a permanent vacancy occurs, the vice chair will be appointed as chair in election.
That'll fix it.
That fixes it right there. All there is, anything else just happens to be a one-off of a temporary.
Yeah.
A fight for the chair couldn't be the chair. He was, I mean, like you said, he's been on world tour. Who knows?
I moved to substitute that suggestion with this language.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meaning permanent.
Permanent,
Left in
that's
there,
it.
the rest
Yep,
of
that's
it.
correct.
That's a soldier problem. We were both more comfortable with me getting back in the chair if there's
Because
a majority.
technically,
agreeing
Tim's
that I
still the
could-
chair.
Yeah, because the
Technically,
vacancies will be
Tim-
change in the bylaws.
Yeah.
What?
I mean, I
It's
agree with
not-
the language and the simplicity, but
It's not a post,
well, it will fix it the next time, but
So there's
I'm
two problems.
still chair.
Let me ask a clarifying question, if I may. So the vacancy occurred between the two meetings, right?
yes,
Okay, so you were chair of the January meeting.
no,
I was not.
No.
Vacancies before the January.
yeah.
Oh, I
I-
recommend for the next meeting, for now, you have the word permanent. For the next meeting, you need to define disruption. You need to define that.
Why? I don't understand why. it's a-
Because that, I think that the disruption is why we sort of have all been like, well, does that mean if he's in the hospital? Does that mean if he's?
Right.
But
But it
But-
sounds like we're talking about unique situations and that's why I think it needs to be defined.
I see.
but next meeting, Tim will be chair.
What what, within the bylaws, what are the powers of CTAC to just,
CTAC can basically amend the bylaws and that at the end of the amendments of the bylaws, they can vote on new items. That's the reason why the language is there, is it enables you to have.
what
that
if we
capacity.
change, what if we change the language here? And because I realize we're going a little long on this. What if we change the language here to, if there is, if there's a vacancy in the chair causing the vice chair to take office or to take the chairmanship, the following meeting, CTAC can, by a majority vote, restore the chair to the chair if he's returned.
We already voted on it.
That all-
Okay,
We had a motion and a second.
Yeah,
okay,
we
okay.
should move on to item 7B, is the way I figure it.
I personally, I don't agree with the interpretation of those two. I think that
Okay.
this fixes the problem.
Okay. Well, 7B is voting to, is confirming chair,
Okay.
so.
Should we just throw out a motion in there, just affirming that you are chair of
Yeah.
the committee?
Yeah, I think
Do that. All right, I make that motion.
Second,
All
that's
right.
Under the terms of a template,
what I was thinking.
Tim is missing two, right? Isn't that a temporary disruption
That's true.
of him being chairman?
That's actually,
Who's next?
Well, no, because he is, you're still a member or chair first, like you can be chair and elected and never attend a meeting. Like that is actually not something that would,
I consider that a disruption. That's why I said.
at that point
Well,
in time, we
the
would reach
difficulty-
out to the jurisdiction and say, hey, this is what's going on. And then they can choose whether or not to move.
I think that-
Because if we go to a confirmative chair and vice chair election of officers, we're looking at the city of Fredericksburg to be our vice chair tonight.
I think the difficulty is that when we met in January, when you met in January, I was not on the roll. And that's, I think that's the difficulty.
Yeah.
And, but if we're okay, I mean, if we're okay, it seems like the will of the committee is that we move on to 7B and the motion's been made
Yes, and second,
and seconded,
to affirm you as continuing as chair.
so. We are still.
That within our authority and the bylaws is my question. It sounded like the second
Oh,
part of
it's
the
not.
question is, we don't have the authority to
You
make,
don't have that
Unilateral
elected
decision.
vice chair tonight. I know it's.
that's the second part.
Pedantic,
of
but
other
I
problems.
use that this can, yeah.
Well,
Okay.
pedantic is what this is all.
Yeah,
right? So,
So the fix then is to make that addition that you just made retroactive to the
correct.
31st of December.
correct.
Okay. So go back to the wording you just added that one word to. That amendment you just made, that one word you added to the bylaws.
Yep. Permanent.
There.
6 vacancies.
When a permanent vacancy occurs. And then you
Temporary.
just need to say, this is retroactive to the 31st of December 2020. Because then the change is retroactive and it fixes the problem.
So we need a motion for that.
Yes, you will need to make a motion.
All right, so I move that we amend the language to say,
Hold on one second.
There's a motion on the floor already.
I would like to withdraw my motion that's currently.
Okay.
so amend the language to say, when a permanent vacancy, comma, retroactive to December 31st of 2023, comma, occurs. There we go.
We have a motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All in those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. So,
Yeah.
would you like your seat back?
Sure. Lost it. Retroactive.
Yeah, I never lost it.
Yeah.
What are you doing in my seat? All right. Thank you for your patience, folks. I really appreciate it. All right. I saw that. Thank you. All right. So, next item on the agenda is, item 7C, SS4A corridors and projects. Becky?
Yes, you have,
No, oh, are we not skipping 7? Oh, let's vote on 7B. Or do I have a motion on 7B?
Yes,
Motion, do I have a second?
second,
All right, all in favor, or any further discussion? All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, thank you for the confirmation. Now we're on to 7C. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and CTAC, we have a resolution directing a public comment period for the draft safety action plan for the GWRC Safe Streets and Roads for All. The plan and then the project order countermeasures, are a result of grant, from the Safe Streets, Safe Streets for All, federal grant. It's a long report. The projects in there were approved, selected by the localities, the technical advisory committee for 25, or 5 project corridors per jurisdiction. All 5 GWRC jurisdictions have contributed their 20% match for this grant to be, for this plan to be developed. Each of the 25 corridors has almost 10 countermeasures per quarter, and the draft safety action plan gives the cost estimate for those countermeasures along with crash reduction benefits. Our next step after the public comment period will be to make amendments to the plan as appropriate when we receive them through the public comment period, in hopes that in the upcoming grant cycle for implementation grant requests, that some of these countermeasures will be implemented with an implementation grant through the Safe Streets and Roads for All application process. That concludes my presentation.
All right. Any discussion on this? Yes.
So did I understand correctly? You say all 5 jurisdictions have already contributed their 20% match?
Yes, for the
study,
study that you're,
not yet for the implementation.
Not the beginning.
yeah, the study that you're receiving, and the way the 20% match was determined was through the population, proportions of the jurisdictions.
Okay, so it's only been for the study,
Yes.
not the actual implementation. No, you're fine.
We are, Becky is working with the jurisdictions now to come up with the subset of those projects which we implement in the next 12 months, and asking the jurisdictions if they will make the local match projects, which will give us the opportunity to submit the implementation grant application, which will be adjudicated in 6 months or so, and then by VDOT will be able to implement those.
What if a locality does not provide their local?
We cannot give them the federal funds to implement the project if they won't make the 20%. But if they do, it's the fastest turnaround on a project, because within 2 years, they're already very.
All the countermeasure projects can be accomplished within the existing right-of-way with no right-of-way acquisition or utility relocation, and can be implemented by VDOT in their normal annual project schedule for pavement marking, for example. So what you'll see in the 25 projects that span the 5 localities, there'll be common countermeasure projects. So for example, 3 roads in King George County might be able to get striped down the center line, might be wide enough for that to be accomplished. Or the right of way might be wide enough for a paved shoulder to be installed along that roadway. Fredericksburg Turnpike Route 2 going into Caroline County has that sufficient right of way. So what will happen, we'll have the most success by bundling projects. So what will happen now, each of the jurisdictions will take a look at the total cost of the countermeasures on each particular road. And then we have a backup documentation that gives the subtotal. Let's say Lady Smith Road in Caroline County as an example. So what the Caroline County representatives can do is say, okay, we can afford the raised pavement markers on Lady Smith Road, as well as white edge lines along the road. That cost for that pair of countermeasures will be theirs to come up with their 20% match. But then when we bundle and when VDOT considers implementation of those, they will take all of the projects that have raised reflective pavement markers in all 25 locations. They'll take the edge line or center line, and then they will be able to bundle those and bid those. Each locality, though, will be responsible for their 20% match for their projects. And when they look at, if you will, the menu or suite of countermeasures, they won't necessarily choose all of them due to their expense. And they may even want to phase them into a 1 year, 2 year, and 3 year cycle. Our 2 rural counties don't have the robust funding mechanism as our FAMPO localities. So it will all be up to that locality what price tag to get to choose. They will also be able then to see the crash reduction benefits of each of those. For example, the raised reflective pavement markers, big crash reduction. So they'll be able to internally see what they can get the best bang for the buck. And then our partners at VDOT will also, these cost estimates in our tool are based on our consultants working with past bids of VDOT. Our VDOT folks are going to have to say, hey, we're going to bid this out and build it in 2025. So let's really sharpen our pencil. Make sure when we go to the federal government to ask for the implementation grant dollar amount, that it covers their cost for that future installation and oversight. So, but we have a great partnership, and VDOT, the kings of construction, they're putting these countermeasures in now, using federal dollars. This will be a great boost. And the great thing about it, we've been able to use kind of an overused term now, but a data-driven process to find the most critical projects, the most important countermeasures to reduce crashes and fatal injuries and fatalities. So we've brought to the top those that will benefit the most people, and really try to part of this safety action plan that's adopted is a commitment to 2 things. One is a target for reaching 0 deaths on our roadways. Right now, VDOT's target is to reduce fatalities and serious injuries by 50% of the current day number by 2045. The other commitment is to have an ongoing working group to monitor the progress and to report on the crash reduction as these things are implemented to make sure we our promises. In addition to infrastructure countermeasures, behavioral countermeasures are also part of the safety action plan. Youth programs in the high schools to promote safe driving and try to reduce impaired driving. We have part of the 5 E's of crash reduction. That's education. The other is emergency management services. So we have post-crash care as far as the speed at getting a critically injured individual to the hospital within the time for them to recover. Coley Tizell, our public information officer, has developed a great survey that we're going to be putting out during the public comment period for folks to rank what they feel is the most important from crash reduction benefit, as well as a map where you can drag and drop a recommendation for a safety improvement. And we've already tested it. I live in Caroline County, and there are a couple of intersections there that I've been trying to get improve safety. So everybody can say, wow, I'd like to see a stop ahead sign, because by the time I get there, I'm surprised at that kind of thing. So we're really trying to get the word out, particularly to our citizens that aren't on our 1,300 mailing list, particularly in those rural counties.
Are you gonna send that link out to all of us?
Yes, yes. Once the public comment period is authorized by the, we have a full strategy to not only reach our current mailing list with the link to the safety action plan and quarters with the survey, but we're also really making a concerted effort to get into King George, Caroline, Port Royal, and Bowling Green because those, folks aren't as kind of tuned in as the FAMPO jurisdiction.
All right, is there an action we needed to take on that? On 7C?
Endorse the resolution.
Endorse it? Do I have a motion to endorse?
Motion to endorse.
Do we have further discussion?
That wasn't an action item.
No, I know, I just wanted to see if there was any action that we needed, because, no, okay. Motion, so we're dropping the motion, all right, moving on to 7D. This is tip amendments and modifications.
That we approve, we endorse both resolution 2421 to adopt amendment to the tip, which is administrative, and to endorse a resolution 2423 directing a public comment period.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do we have any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that's 7D. Both 1 and 2, I believe. All right, 8, staff updates.
Okay. Let's go ahead and pull up, actually, Ian, did you want to provide the PC and TAC update?
Sure. So those are all tip items, and the transportation project obligations is just a retrospective list of all the money that we've spent in the region on projects. So those tip amendments, there's just a ton of them. They're largely administrative and they come across our desk regularly. The one is a rollover. Is that the rollover one on there? Yeah, the rollover means that we have moved to a new tip. Tip is a document, transportation improvement program. It's a document, and every 4 years you have to rewrite it. So we've just rewritten it. But in between the time when we approved it and the time VDOT actioned it, there are a bunch of months, and projects get added to the old tip during those months. Rollover just brings those projects from the interregnum into the new tip. So that's what that is. Basically, it's all administrative stuff, and I'm not going to bore you with any more detail. My administrator report is on the website. You can look at that. Smart scale has been a real bear this year because the CTB kept changing the rules of the game until very late. We're supposed to give VDOT our proposed projects at the end of November, and the CTB was still making changes to the rules of the game at their January meeting. So that's really awkward because you've got to commit to your projects sort of before you know what the rules are. Anyway, we've worked to try and get the best out of that. So we've got a list of proposed projects. We're waiting for approval on the list of 10. There'll be 5 for GWRC, 5 for FAMPO. Those projects then go in for engineering work and cost estimates and a whole lot of stuff to be done. And we then, closer to the final deadline for submission, have to reduce the 10 to 8. But 2 of them have to drop off because we decide they're not good enough. And those projects get submitted then to Smart Scale for a competitive process to allocate funding. If you don't know what Smart Scale is, for newer members, it's the data-driven, in theory, method for the state to allocate money to transportation projects. And they do this with a competitive bid process, and we get to submit those 8 projects. We're busy working with the technical advisory committee on those. SS4A, you just heard about, so I'm not going to do that all again. Just heard. CMAC, STGB.
That's a future agenda, or next.
That's your next agenda item, so I'm not going to rework that for you. The river crossing pathway, have you got that on tonight's agenda? So I'm not going to redo that. You're going to hear about it in a minute. The raised grant application, we just providing a letter of support to Stafford County for this particular intersection improvement. Raised grant is a federal grant. And so all FAMPO does is provide a letter of support to jurisdictions. And then the transfer of funds, we are moving a small amount of money between two of our studies. One is the Freight Summit, which we underspent on by about $12,000, and the VCR Trail project, which ended up costing us more. So we're shifting the funds from one to the other, which was approved by the policy committee, and then there's correspondence. So that's that agenda. And you want to quickly pop over to that one. A lot of the items are the same, and when they are the same, I'm not going to repeat them because you'll just get the same information again, which is important. There is another amendment. John, is this the CTAC that happened after the last policy? Yeah,
Last policy.
okay, so this will be new.
It's actually the items that we approved tonight or recommended for.
So a lot of those items are now on your agenda, then you should just redo them. The smart scale technical review, are you talking about that tonight? So that's the guide. The technical guide was approved by the Commonwealth Transportation Board in the January meeting. And that is the final list of rules of the game. The guide tells you what things you have to do for your projects to be eligible and what things you have to do to help them score highly to get the cash. And it's only finalized now in January. So now we use that to choose our projects and to improve our projects to score well. And we have a regional project selection list. Probably if you could click on that list. John, have you got it in the meeting tonight? Okay, well then unclick on that. Cody, never mind. Sorry, I misled you. The river crossing, you can get tonight. The CMAC, are you going through that tonight? So I'm not going to do that.
Actually, I wasn't going over the smart scale as a staff item. But Colby just opened it, so it wasn't on discussion.
Tony, then let's just end with that. Yeah, open. So that is the list of projects we are working with right now. If you look from the top, the top about 6, we've asked 6 in 3. We've asked VDOT's assistance to do some engineering work and some cost estimating. And then the next ones, you scroll down, after they're in either this one, the Stafford County is going to pay for the engineering and cost estimate work to be done, etc. This one is part of a study. I believe this is an oldest study, if I remember correctly, so we have already the information. I think these are 2 that are in the current study, VDOT study. And this is a project that was submitted in round 5, which is being resubmitted now, so a lot of the work is being done. Those are the projects that will make up the 10 that we will be submitting to what they call the pre-submission phase. And out of those, we have to drop 2. So the 2 that the policy committee decides are the least preferred will be removed, but those are the projects. So just scroll to the top again. So it's the exit 136 on the I-95, modifications into Centerport Parkway and US 1. It's a two different intersections. I-95 widening. This project, those of you who've been around a while will have seen this 5 times before. Spotsylvania really wants this project, and it's back in again. Warrington Road widening. This interchange between US Route US Route 1 and State Route 3 be upgraded. Scroll down, please. Butler Road widening to Castle Rock Drive, from Castle Rock Drive to Carter Street. This is a new project, right? This doesn't exist. We're building a new road if this one gets approved to connect Enon Road to Centerport Parkway. It will provide access for Southern Stafford to a new I-95 on-ramp that already exists. The Centerport Parkway on-ramp, off-ramp interchange exists, but you can't get to it from Southern Stafford because there's no roadway that goes through there. So this provides the missing link.
Where would it connect onto Centerport?
Near
Well, it'll
Trusley.
be fairly straight line north-south, so it connects from the elbow of Enon Road where the 90-degree turn is, straight up to Centerport Parkway, roughly where the 90-degree turn is in Centerport Parkway. So those two are going to be roughly connected. It's a new road altogether. It has some. The benefit of this is that it builds out the grid network, and you'll remember we talked about the grid reducing congestion and giving you access, so that if there's a oil tanker blows up on one road, there's another way to get around without having to wait for somebody to clear the oil tanker. So that's the benefit of having a grid. This is a road widening of Harrison Road. Intersection upgrade. These two studies, we're not 100% sure yet what the elements will be. VDOT is running pipeline studies, and the elements that will be chosen are still TBD. And I know what you're going to ask about this being all adding capacity. Remember that technical guide I just spoke about, which the CTB approved, we're bound by that thing. So the technical guide this round focuses on big projects that are typically roadway projects. They have reduced, and if you want to disagree, we disagree. We think it's a mistake that the CTB has shifted the focus to large projects, and they've shifted the focus away from bicycle and pedestrian improvements to roadway improvements because of the way they've set up the scoring for this round. It's like a pendulum, you know, they feel the previous round spent too much money on bicycle and pedestrian paths, shared use paths. We benefited, we got $16 million for bicycle and pedestrian improvements, the VCR trail, the Bankside trail, and all that. Well, this is the backlash. They now want to throw the money at big roadway improvements. So that's the way this is going to go. And for that reason, you won't see a lot of bicycle and pedestrian projects in our list because they're not going to get funded. We'll put them in there, the CDB will just not approve them. So the other items I believe on that agenda are on your agenda tonight. So
You said we have to, this list has to be pared down from 10 to 2 or 10 to 8 or something?
yes.
So when is that due to be done?
But we have to get what they call the pre-application list has to be in by March the 31st, I think. And then the final list, which is the shorter list with 2 removed, has to be submitted July.
Sometime. Okay.
July.
So here's what I'm getting at, my question, if I may, or my comment, is, you know, we're supposed to be, you know, acting as a sounding board for transportation. We're supposed to be advising the FAMPO policy board. So what I'd like to see is a briefing on those 10 projects, a little more than a sentence. Says why, you know, intersection improvement. Those 10, and we might have some input on what we think the top 8 should be, or the top 2. We used to do that a lot. We talk about projects what they meant to us and what they were really about. And so we knew something about projects. We haven't done that much in this committee in quite a while, actually. So anyway, I think it'd be very possible, sounds like plenty of time to accomplish this in one of the coming meetings.
So that actually kind of ties into what I was gonna ask, which is how is prioritization when you're paring down? How does the prioritization work?
So the first 10,
Yeah,
well, according to the law and the technical guide, I believe it's just the vote of the policy committee that makes this decision. But what happens is that the technical advisory committee spends a lot of time working with FAMPO staff and jurisdiction staff to try to come up with these projects. Jurisdictions submit projects to us, and we then further develop those projects and make a recommendation to the TAC on which ones we think should be in the 10, which we've done, and those are them. TAC then makes changes, so the TAC removed one and added a new one, which is fine. We then go to the policy committee and ask them to agree that those are the 10. We give an explanation, plus the TAC members talk to their, what we used to call principals. That gives the 10 by vote. Then we have from the end of March till July to then decide which two to chuck off. That process, it's informed by the technical guide, which by then is finalized. So then we can try to come up with a guesstimate on the score. We sort of try and guess which of those will score well. Because of course you're competing against every other region in Virginia. It's no good submitting your favorite project knowing it's going to be the worst one in Virginia in terms of its score. So you have to use this technical guide and examine your projects. So staff at FAMPO do that. VDOT also provides assistance by reviewing our projects and can give some hints and allegations as to what they think will score well. The FAMPO TAC does the same thing. Look at what FAMPO staff say, look at what VDOT says, look at their own calculations and whatever, and make recommendations. And ultimately that recommendation then goes to the policy committee, who may decide they don't like any of our recommendations and just pick another two that they want to throw off. So at the end of the day, the policy committee will make the decision. But you have a role, just like the TAC, just like the FAMPO staff. And I would suggest, Mr. Chair, you ask for a briefing in not before April, because unless you want to change one of the 10, right, then get the briefing done like now. But if you want to be part of the process to reduce the 10 to 8, then I would suggest in April you ask for a briefing, because then it's early enough for you to make the input to the policy committee and their thinking, and the TAC and their thinking about which projects should drop off.
and so just as a briefing, we don't need a full vote on that. I can just ask for that as chair for April, right?
As an
You can,
agenda item.
you
yes.
can ask for the FAMPO staff together with VDOT or whoever you want to come and brief you on the 10 projects. And for you then to make a recommendation to the policy committee is your decision.
When do we need to make a recommendation to the policy committee? Do you think?
I would do that in April-ish,
April? Okay, so
because that still gives us May and June to work that, or you can do it in May. April or May, I would do that.
well, I feel like we've been bitten before, because last year we had the issue with talking about the RTA stuff. Where we just kind of, it came to us too late. So I'd like to, can we be briefed in March and then make our recommendations in April?
Sure.
Is that something we can do? Right.
Sure.
And all the projects relating to Stafford County, from their own staff, they've already kind of used smart scale criteria and did evaluate which projects, not just these, but the ones that are specific to their own jurisdiction, that they're going to be, using funds for. Those have already been put online, available, and are available to look at.
Can we make sure to see the smart scale evaluations in the briefing as well? I realize they're online, but
Right. So just remember well, just understand what you're asking. FAMPO and GWRC get 5 and 5, which we reduced to 4 and 4.
Right.
each jurisdiction also gets 5.
Right,
So Stafford has got their own 5, which are not these.
Right.
The 5 others that Stafford has. We as FAMPO staff would not presume to tell you why they chose those 5. I would ask them to tell you.
okay,
Same as Spotsylvania has chosen their 5, and
Right.
the city has chosen 5, and so on. So you might want to ask a staff member from each of those jurisdictions, because I wouldn't want to. They make those decisions.
Right.
I wouldn't want to try and second guess why they chose this road and not that road.
but the 10,
But the 10, we can.
and we're looking, yeah, that's more what I'm talking about, because that's, I mean, realistically, we don't have a time frame to influence what the 10 are. The 10 are basically what they are at this point. So, but in terms of reducing the 10, if we want to have input, part of our input would have to be informed by the smart scale estimates, would it not? Yeah.
Sure, we would have to work with VDOT to try and give you a guesstimate on.
Is that doable?
It is, you have to remember some of these things aren't exact science, because it's competitive.
Right,
So your score determines, your score is based on the criteria, which we have now for the first time. But it's also based on how good the projects are in Richmond and Hampton Roads, and so we won't be able to give you the exact score in a sense. We can get you a worked up score, but we can't compare it to how well others would do, because they will.
Well, for example, it depends on what else is the top 20. So if the Hampton Roads Bay Bridge tunnel comes in and congestion things, it can completely skew the scoring process. So
Right.
that gets lots. And then the second one is like it
So what we can do,
stretches and compresses in weird ways.
what we can do is compare our projects to each other
right,
and tell you that this is our best project and this is our worst project. What we can't do is compare our projects to
right.
what the other people are doing, because we don't know what their projects are yet.
Well, and with that as an understandable caveat, I just think if we're gonna have input, it would be best if our input is as informed as it can be.
We'll do what we can,
Okay,
but then don't rush us. If we do that in April,
okay,
and then in May, you can give your opinion to the board. That would be my suggestion.
okay. Yeah, yes,
And local match also winds up skewing things too, if I'm correct.
okay,
Yeah, if you put in local match, you do better.
okay. 8B?
Okay, so CMAC STBG, so CMAC Congestion Mitigation, Air Quality and Surface Transportation Block Grant, and we also include the carbon reduction funds in this process. FAMPO distributes in this round about $6 million to the jurisdictions and transit agencies based on a pre-existing methodology. So each jurisdiction gets to submit up to 10 slots. Sometimes they're paired together, so it's not always 10 projects because they can compete for both funds, and that counts as a slot each. And our transit agencies can submit up to 6 projects. Previously, I believe I was able to show that these were the projects submitted. We had all of our jurisdictions and providers submit the maximum amount of projects. They all screened in. And since that screening process that occurred in early January, end of January, we were able to put together a scoring list available to the TAC at our last meeting. If you scroll down. So just a summary real quick, 36 total projects. There's a request for about $53 million in funding for the 6 million. We saw most of the jurisdictions, a few of our jurisdictions kind of asked for about the total amount or not a little bit more. We did have Stafford request actually a lot more out of its projects. Typically, as we're done, each transit or transportation mode gets a different percentage out of the total amount. So roadways gets either 60 or 65%, depending on their funding category. Active transportation gets 20 or 15%. Studies gets, I think, 10%, and transit gets 15%. So typically, we're kind of limited on how much we can fund per project. And so it depends on the jurisdiction and how much they ask. Generally speaking, the top 2 projects in each category receive funding. Occasionally, the third does. So you normally want to be in the top 2. Then we can scroll down. For CMAC roadway projects, the two projects that scored the highest are Spotsylvania South Point Parkway intersection improvements, along with the Route 28 Levels Road intersection improvements. Route 1 South Point isn't unexpected. It was actually a very strong project in the previous round that's coming back and requesting additional funding. So did naturally score pretty well. Levels Road kind of was fairly strong across the board with a very strong cost effectiveness score, which kind of brought it up along with the low leverage funding. This is one of the categories that might see 3 projects squeezed in, because I do believe, depending on the allocations from PDOT and the federal government, this is going to be one of those that we might be able to fund the third option. We don't know yet until the actual funding comes, because the amounts requested for both of those top 2 projects are right about the limit that we can provide for this category. Interestingly enough, just as I note, in a lot of cases, Route 1 projects from all the jurisdictions were applied. The city didn't apply for it in their CMAC allocation list. They applied for it in their STBG, and they focused their CMAC on active transportation projects. We scroll down to the next one. The raw data, if you want to look at how we scored things, that is available, so you can actually see how and where we put the scoring. And so in this case, you can see that crash frequency for South Point Parkway was pretty high. Capco score was also very high, and it actually for crash reduction, the lower score the better. So 0.88 is strong, but it wasn't as strong as, say, the 0.635 that the Massaponax Church, but didn't have as many crashes, and so it's kind of a balance there. So you can kind of see the raw scores if you wish to do so. If we scroll down, for transit funding, the top 2 for CMAC and carbon reduction was the Route 28 corridor service expansion, as well as the Spotsylvania Transit Center and service expansion. Those were the top 2. This has a big air quality benefit, so it's not unsurprising that the score held highly, because they're operational versus equipment replacement. And you can see the scoring breakdown lower below there as well. For the next slide, in CMAC active scores, Fredericksburg's VCR Trail Bridge, both over Route 3 and Route 1, scored well this round. This wasn't completely as they applied the previous round. It was high score, but there were other projects selected. They kind of came back, and with the new methodologies, a little bit higher emphasis, particularly on crash safety, these scores did pretty well, since they are grade separated. And you can see the breakdown below, and the raw data is also provided. The next slide, STBG roadways, again, South Point Parkway did well, as well as I-95. These were both previously submitted projects, and they are large projects. The methodology still prefers those, and they scored well in this round. For STBG transit, and I'll go ahead and loop active in here. These require that they benefit the North Stafford TMA in some way. A relatively loose definition, particularly for transit, is that certain submissions, because the nature, such as vehicle replacement and amenities, they can't necessarily specify. You can only use a bus in a specific location. So if it enters in on the fleet, it still benefits the TMA, because those would eventually work their way through the different service areas, because you can't dedicate buses. So they were the eligible applicants, and transit vehicles and transit shelters amenities scored higher. This one was kind of skewed, because they kind of scored similar, and ultimately it came down to the cost per annual user, cost benefit, that kind of tilted things in different ways here. And finally, STBG, Stafford's the only eligible applicants. The Mine Road, Green Springs, bike ped improvements, sidewalks, with the only one, and they will be receiving funding for this round. Finally, the last items was studies. Spotsylvania's Harrison Road interchange and the Harrison Road widening studies both scored well. The nature that what the IAR is, interstate access request, I think I'm getting that correct, is a very specific technical requirement as far as planning studies. And because of the actual additional requirements of the outputs of those, it scores well in a lot of the metrics. And Harrison Road widening kind of fell in second behind it. So those are the projects. If you want to dive into where the projects earn their numbers and the scores, feel free. Staff is actually working still to just review and make minor tweaks and changes. We did note that there was an error within the Spotsylvania's Route 217 initial scoring, where it was not given points for being in the transportation master plan. We've identified and corrected that it should have received points for that, but we also identified that it was also given the scope of the project that was provided, like in the scores, is actually shorter than what the description of it, and some of it has like the same purple line going across, and then it says to be funded by others. So it wasn't technically in the application, but when we put it into our map, and because we do buffer analysis around it, we drew the line all the way out, we caught that, and so it gained points in one area, lost points in a little bit area, still gained a net increase in 4 points, but it didn't reshuffle the ordering or the deck on that front. But that's something that within the next couple of weeks, we are just going through, often working with jurisdiction staff to say, yeah, did we do the math right on all of these? So that's the CMAQ STBG update.
One question, nobody might have the answer off the top of their head. So one of the projects is the Harrison Road exit, interchange IAR. Which, when we did in the past, we did a study of the potential places where we should put an interchange in our area here. Was Harrison Road the number one on that, the results of that? Does anybody remember studying the results off the top of their head?
So the I-95 corridor study recommended a number of possible interchange connections.
Correct.
One was at the Welcome Center.
Correct.
Into Central Park, Harrison Road interchange and so on. The more recent FAMPO East-West Mobility Study showed that really if you want to have a bigger impact on the congestion on Route 3, the project that makes the most difference is the Harrison Road interchange. If you want to solve the congestion problem on US 17, Stafford, the project that makes the most difference is the river crossing bridge. It alleviates the congestion east of wherever you make the connection. So it depends what you're trying to solve, what solution will do it, right? If you're just taking the total regional congestion issue, then all sorts of things you have to do. But if the problem is the congestion on Route 3, then build the Harrison interchange. If the problem is the congestion on 17, then build the river crossing. If the problem is congestion on I-95, VDOT's just spent millions of dollars working on that. If your problem is something more that one of your other members might like, problem is getting people to DC, then you really want to get more high-speed trains, because that has a better effect, right? So it depends what the problem is. Each of those studies recommend these things, but it's what are they recommending? What solution are they recommending to which problem is what's more important? Because you can, I mean, as you know, you can create a study that will recommend anything you want if you retool the study to suit a particular outcome that you're trying to achieve. You can mess with the results. But we know from multiple studies now that the fixed Route 3 congestion is the I-95 interchange, or what now is being proposed in the pipeline study is very serious grade separated concrete structures on Route 3 to alleviate the congestion, which are more ugly. And now you've got a big concrete barrier between the Spotsylvania town center and Central Park. It's going to be ugly, it's going to be expensive, and the Harrison Road interchange is also going to be expensive, but it's the highway is already there, so you're kind of used to big ugly things there. Whereas in Central Park, you might not want it so big and ugly. But anyway, that's a wait for another day.
Thank you.
All right, 8C.
So the FAMPO River Crossing Alternative Study update. Since our last meeting, we've had updates from our consultants. They came and provided our stakeholder meeting group with kind of their initial kind of project scopes, and they're showing their initial kind of, I would say, due diligence and homework. So they were showing where they've collected data, where they're collecting. They were asking, okay, we've defined the environmental scoping area, which is typically larger than what it normally is traditionally area you expended beyond. Is there anything missing? And so during that stakeholder meeting, they basically presented kind of what they are doing, what they were collecting the data, what they've accomplished thus far, as well as kind of some of the next steps in analysis, because they're going to be doing a deep dive into kind of the data that they've collected, as well as just kind of looking through that. So it's kind of the behind the scenes in the kitchen type of items. So if you scroll down, we do have some information. This was kind of some examples of the data they collected. So this isn't all, but this is some where they're kind of showing in early December what was happening at those circle locations. So they were looking at particularly at Route 17 for this item. And so you can kind of see that it ramps up heavily during the AM, then remains busy throughout the day, and then peaks again for the PM commute. In other locations like see I-95 in the bottom right, that's kind of southbound coming up. You can see southbound, it kind of gets busy. And then when the evening commute hits, it gets a lot busier. So they're pulling actual traffic counts. This isn't modeling assumptions or not. They were pulling actual traffic counts. I think it was December 7th, 8th, and maybe one other day or two in that time frame.
That's 95 at what locations?
Let's see, 95 southbound at US 3 ramp. So, yeah. So they've been pulling that. If you scroll down, you'll see the environmental study area. So although we are looking at, say, river crossing options in this, we draw the kind of the catchment area to try to identify any environmental, historical, cultural resources a lot wider. And so we were working to identify and say, hey, particularly with like county staff, is there anything we're missing during this? Is there any other type entity or agency we need to consult? And items such as that. Just scroll down. So they were developing the coordination of public outreach. We are having our first public meeting March 20th. We're going to have an open house kind of drop-in meeting style. So the consultants will set up large kind of poster boards with maps that they can then take feedback on and kind of present kind of get the gauge of the community for various concepts that they've been working on. Don't have the exact details of that yet, but board details, I should say, the stuff that they're presenting. But we have the event location at the VDOT District Auditorium on 86 Deacon Road. That was the same location that we had the River Crossing Study Policy meeting, if you're attending that. And we are looking to have our second public meeting later in the summer, early fall in the city of Fredericksburg. We're going to be talking with the city to see if we can't have the ballpark or another large venue like that, because that's going to be kind of the bigger meeting of the two. So
just a quick comment. You've done the meeting is from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. And it's, as John has just said, a workshop type format with no chairs. It's all the boards, like Stations of the Cross, if you can. It's like boards around the room, and you go to the board and there's something there that explains either the route options or the goal of the study or whatever else. And there'll be opportunity for you to talk to the consultants who are going to be at each station. You can ask questions, you can give feedback to them about what you think about the proposals that they're working on. And there'll be an opportunity for you to pick things that you like more and things that you like less, so that it gives feedback to the study. The only point I wanted to make is, you don't have to all rush at 5 o'clock, because there's no formal sit-down meeting with a microphone. It's an interactive process. So you can go at 6, you can go at 6:30, you can go at 5:30. Don't all rush at one time, because then you've got, 200 people in a room that accommodates 100. Spread yourself around, go when comfortable to you. The venue will be open, the facilitators will be there for the full 2 hours from 5 to 7. So you can go at any time during that period if you wish to go. And please pass that on to your communities. You don't have to all rush at once. You can go anytime during the 2 hours.
Will there be an opportunity to hear the varied views of the opposition?
Who are the opposition?
I'm sorry,
Who are the opposition?
I don't know. That's why I would go to find out who would show up and speak out against it. But you're not going to have the opportunity for people to go and speak out against it publicly, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, there's no microphone meeting.
Just go make
It's
your
a
comments.
Information gathering meeting, and the meeting is not to show the results of the study. That's going to be a second meeting in 3 or 6 months later, once there is things that you can protest if you want to protest, because then we'll have a recommended alternative and a second alternative, and all the data of what's been discovered and the environmental and historical resources that might be impacted will be known. They'll be listed and shown, and you can comment on those. This is more information sharing at the beginning of the study. So you can voice your opposition to the project, and it's going to be captured in the public comment register and the public comments that will be attached to the report. So your individual comments will be attached to the report at the end, but that report's only going to be generated in November. This is the come and tell us if you think we're missing an option, for example, or if you think that you want to stop it at all costs, you can say that and it gets captured. So all comments will be captured.
We really like this waterfall in England run. That's the type, so.
So you can say that, please don't build this thing here.
All-
It's a terrible
all-
idea.
If I understand correctly, all the opposition comments, or also pro comments, will be captured,
Yes.
but where will they be on display?
They're not going to be on display at the first meeting, because we'll be well, not we, the consultant will be writing down those comments or recording them. They will then capture them into the report that they produce as the study goes along. So they'll be available later in the year.
In a report?
Yes, together with comments from the consultant on those comments.
What I'm looking for is the equivalent that we used to have back in the day when you had a meeting with the chairs, and they asked for public comments. When I went to a meeting like that, then I could hear what the opposition had to say about this. It was very educational.
My understanding is that that format of meeting is going to be the format for the second public hearing.
Okay, thank you. The second question is, there was a stakeholders meeting you referred to. Was one of those stakeholders, Friends of the Rappahannock?
That's the environmental stakeholders. So we have included the Friends of the Rappahannock, the Virginia Outdoor Foundation, and the Northern Virginia.
I don't know who was attending online to basically
That's the name of the trust, Northern Virginia.
Conservation Trust.
So they get invited to all of those meetings. I don't believe the Friends of the Rappahannock attended the last. I can't be certain off the top of my head, but I don't believe they did. Adam Lynch, who was their representative before that, came to the previous river crossing study, which was hosted by the FAMPO staff.
But they were invited.
Yeah, and the consultant is going to also make a special appeal to those environmental groups, because there has to be a certain level of consultation, which is written into the easements. So there's gonna be a special outreach to them to say, by the way, here's the thing. The Virginia Outdoor Foundation said that they don't have a lot to say at the moment until we have a preferred alternative. Then they will have a lot to say. So we invite them, we send them the email, we send them the materials, but they're not saying a lot at this stage.
Thank you.
You got something to say?
Yeah, at the first meeting on the 20th, that rather than just present opinions about this, that, or the other thing, will be the opportunity to actually present information to the consultants.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay,
But we don't have every detail about exactly how you will submit those sorts of things.
okay,
The consultant's still working on what the materials will be and where the room they're going to be placed, and whether we need an information table at the front, or whether we're working out with feedback and with the consultant.
Mr. Fogg, you had a question?
No, not a question. I do want to say on behalf of Spotsylvania Transportation Committee, their planning department, that we do have 2 routes in Spotsylvania County that are further west than I think any of the ones I saw on that map, that we are very interested in, and that do not affect any of the National Park Service, which has in the past been a very bad problem for us, because there is so much national park out there. And just in the last few weeks, we looked at that pretty hard. And we would be interested in talking with the consultants and with FAMPO about that, and seeing how we could work with them on that, as we are not as interested in anything coming into Central Park because of the problems that it caused to Route 3 west, regardless of whether Harrison Road is ever, an interchange is ever put there, because not only for Spotsylvania, and I used to be a traffic engineer for VDOT, and then I was consulting traffic engineer, and the only reason I'm here is my heart is for the whole Fredericksburg area, not just Spotsylvania. Okay? I've traveled all over this area, and I want to see the whole area thrive, not just one part of it. And I would love to see a loop around here, but I've been told by the feds that'll never happen. Never. But I still have hopes that somehow we could see that happen. That somehow we could put one around there, that people don't have to come straight through the city to get to the outskirts of it. But Orange County is proposing thousands and thousands and thousands of homes, and many of those are right there to where they're going to have to come in Route 3 to get to Northern Virginia. And Harrison Road isn't going to be the one they're going to be coming in on. And that's one of the things that comes up every time we have a meeting. And it came up last week when we had a meeting again. And that's a problem that we just can't see a solution to what's going to happen there in the Central Park to Salem Church and even Harrison Road, if we continue to allow that to expand in capacity there, and not be able to do anything about, especially that couple miles in that area there. And we would like to avoid putting another crossing right there that's going to bring that much more traffic across and bring it in at Bragg Road.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dave, I saw your hand.
I was gonna ask if I may direct my question to Alan, and Alan, is it what you have to share be something that we would all learn from or?
Well, I attended.
You could bring it another time perhaps, maybe?
Sure, I attended the same stakeholder meeting that Mr. Fogg is speaking about, and I was very intrigued by the option that it was going to go directly kind of down Cannon Ridge, due south river crossing, and then kind of connect back to Route 3 around Fry and Single Oak. I'm just saying that it was very intriguing, and it was very interesting to hear Spotsylvania's interest in having a river crossing, because obviously in the past, we've heard that there was opposition.
That's right. That could be a fantastic crossing like that.
I just want there to be one. So, whatever we can all be happy with. Good. That's it for 8C. All right, 8D.
Performance and safety targets. So, regularly NPOs have to say, are we doing our jobs as far as addressing performance and safety? Traditionally, medium-sized NPOs will go ahead and take the state safety targets. We got safety targets for the region and apply those going forward. So this is the letter that we are submitting that basically says, yes, we are adopting the VDOT's traffic safety targets, and these the numbers and targets are going to be what the NPO kind of uses to kind of go forward. So very short and sweet. There's anything unusual. Every so often, you know, VDOT or the state will change things a little bit, but we just generally say, yep, what y'all say is what we move forward with.
Cool. All right, good for 8D.
Okay.
All right, 8E.
Finally, the NPO self-certification. This is basically kind of a reaffirmation that yes, we're complying with the laws and requirements that NPOs have to do in that if it's transit related, equity related, Clean Air Act related. It's basically saying, yes, we acknowledge those and that's what we do and how we conduct our business. So it's just makes us say, yep, we're going to be doing that. So.
All right, that's it for AD. Turning the page. Community reports.
Nicely.
Sure.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tamara Banks. And I hope everybody can hear me. No?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So we received a letter from Ms. Jane Lee, that you all know we received a few letters from Ms. Jane Lee. So tonight I would like to address that letter, just so we can have an understanding of where we are, where we're going, and how we could be a better help to her, or just give her some information, so maybe the next letter, we can maybe switch some topics. So I do apologize for not having this for everybody's copy, but I've been, So did everybody receive a copy of the letter? Okay, so if you have, you can go with, I highlighted a few things. So I'm just gonna highlight what I felt, my opinion, was kind of important to answer. So her first paragraph, and yes, they are paragraphs, although disabled, aged, and financially challenged. So the average disabled person's income, and that's as DI alone, is $1,300 per month. The cost to live in the Fredericksburg region is about $15,600. So it's not transportation that is the barrier, it's the amount of funding that someone as DI gets to live here in Fredericksburg. And I also do have a sheet, and I'm sorry, it's not a sheet, but I just want to look at it. That is the current information about how much it costs to live here. Sorry, the print is small, but it's kind of best I can do. She also said about inviting them, that verbatim, are invited to your monthly meetings. The only concerns actively addressed are those enabling single drivers to commute to their jobs or do all things that maintain their quality of life. My response, Fredericksburg Go has consistently been working to improve their system over the past 4 years under the leadership of Ms. Jackson. Those improvements have increased ridership and gained a new audience of riders. On the bottom of that sheet, you'll see how much the ridership has increased. Not with just free fares, but with people in areas that didn't know about Fred Transit, now being introduced to it. Funding for audible signals, light rail systems, better and more resources related to accessibility of issues for Fred Transit, the VRE, and Amtrak are always the same. There's no funding for that. The cost for an APS, which is an audio pedestrian system, averages about $8,000 to $12,000 per four-way intersection if ranked enough smart scale to actually get money for that, to have those at those intersections. As you know, we don't have a whole lot of intersections with crosswalks or audible signals. In order to do that, there has to be a study, and we have to make sure there's a need. There's no need of putting audible signals in an area that does not have a disabled person or anybody that's going to be able to that audible signal. She can come right back to me. None of the members of the GWRC use the VRE or Fred Trans on a regular basis, if at all. That is a falsehood. And I'm sorry, Ms. Leeds, but that is. Before I became a travel trainer, I was consistently utilizing public transportation. When I moved here, I moved to Matthews County, Virginia from Philadelphia. There was no real, for me, what I consider was real public transportation. I mostly understood that that I lived in the metropolitan area, but transferred to a rural area, and these areas do not have the convenience of a big city because they're not big cities. So basically, I had to adapt and utilize it accordingly. I'm sorry, I'm getting cold. So the other thing was, how can you understand the scope of needs and how resources are to be used if you're not impaired? What are young people who are impaired and trained by a school budget to work when they have no safe, reliable accessibility or affordable transportation? Again, since the start of transition to transit that was launched in 2023, we started with one high school. We are now in 3 Stafford High School, 1 Fredericksburg High School. That program has trained over 100 students who use public transportation who are now using public transportation. How do you know that? How do I know that? Because we started the transition to transit program. I go through the schools and I teach kids who use public transportation, who are going from school bus to public transportation. Colonial Forge was our policy.
I think she had the policy.
We're all committee members, policy, non-policy, she's calling us all out.
And it's wrong to make an assumption about anyone because
Well, the assumptions are made because she's uninformed, so again, we're gonna inform her. This is one of the things I did not understand, but I'm gonna try to get through it. I am suggesting clearly not a priority of FAMPO, the board, and she's talking about the concept of travel and resources. The board of supervisors and Commonwealth. So-called improvements offer the significant or have improved our quality of life. Resources for offering aids, for offering rides, mobility options who I work for, and commuter buses are so seriously underfunded or inaccessible that it renders them generally useless. Those prepared or age financially challenged. Again, y'all get older. This is what I work for, mobility options, health generation. And you see this is what we, just us as a nonprofit transportation company, this is what we feel. Mobility options is funded by an FTA Section 5310 grant, along with matching support from Mary Washington Hospital. HD3A is one of many organizations across the state that requests Section 5310 from DRPT. These requests are these requests typically exceed the amount of funding that's available as stated by DRPT guidance. We are giving the amount based on the size of the area and where we service. Granted, it's not a large amount, but we're doing the best we can with what we got, and we do exceedingly well for what we have. As you will see when the paper gets passed. She made a comment about it takes decades to acquire right of way. I looked it up on how to acquire right of way. It really does not take decades. It just depends on what county member, what legislation that you actually have in place and what they want to get done. So I asked for a further definition of her understanding of dirty microsystems, because that was not, I didn't understand what she meant by that. Microtransit aids larger transit systems by removing transit desert with a service that provides transportation to the nearby bus stops, which increases ridership and enables better access to education, employment, and social activity. All that she has mentioned, all these things improve the quality of life, which she is asking about quality of life. She makes a point about how Europe, Asia, and cities in US have proven that LRS systems make us better improvement. Well, the many LRS systems that were established eliminated possible low-income housing and closed a lot of mom and pop businesses. Just look at the census for when the light rail was made in Norfolk. Let's see. And I'm sorry this is long, but I want to make sure I address all the big ones. She put pouring concrete and filing dirty buses that, trust me, no one enjoys riding on is in the past. We need clean, fast, reliable, meaningful, and affordable system that will promote a consistent level of ridership to keep costs down and quality of life up. My response. Our local government must see that there is a need for public transportation in our communities. However, they do not rely on public transportation. So the thought of public transportation usage eludes them. We must consistently remind them how public transportation is vital and well worth fighting for. The only point, and I know many of you heard my point, if they don't ride it, they comment on it, they make decisions on it. We can't keep having that. We need our local legislators to get out, ride the bus, find out where these deserts are, find out what will work and what will not work, instead of saying things like Fred Transit doesn't work. I've been riding Fred Transit before I became a travel trainer, and I've actually been riding the bus the past month. Every route that's out there, there is some problem, there is some issues, but if nobody goes out there and actually sees them, they cannot be addressed. Lastly, lastly, our region already has a bad reputation with drivers from other places who complain about our grid light during summer months and holidays. My response. What tourists don't realize is that they aid in the congestion during those summer months. If a tourism or a part-time resident use our public transportation, that would have a trickle-down effect while reducing traffic congestion in those months, if that is an issue. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope I have addressed her letter. My last comment, which is my comment. When people take the time out to write these letters, we need to address them. I've been on this committee for a few years and we get these public comments and nobody's addressing them. That's why they feel we don't work. We can work if we address these letters, and not just here at CTAC, the policy committee, the TAC policy committee, any committee that they have where we're asking for public comments, they need to be addressed by the committee that it's addressed to. I conclude.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So first of all, I want to commend you on your passion and concern that the citizens be responded to. Every single individual here at some point in their life has been passionate about some form of issue, and you want to feel that you are heard. Whether your opinion is correct, whether what you're requesting is realistic, doesn't matter. You want to feel heard, you want to be acknowledged. I actually got elected in King George because former person literally said at public comment, I don't care what any of you citizens have to say. If you don't like what I'm doing, just don't re-elect me. So they didn't re-elect him. So I would recommend that with everyone's approval, I think it would be, you're assuming she's hearing, you're assuming she's watching, you're assuming she's gonna read the minutes, whatever the case may
Well,
be.
she'll be getting a copy of everything that I have.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Do we want to have staff actually put that into a formal letter from us recognizing her?
Response from
A
CTAC
response from
as-
us?
committee, do we have a motion on that? I mean, I'm kind of neutral on this. I'm not opposed. Would you like to propose that or something, or would you?
What do you mean, like?
So basically take what you have there, give it to staff, allow them to utilize and create sort of a response from us that then at the next meeting we can approve?
I would strongly recommend that the CTAC hear draft and respond to the document rather than staff. I mean, I would say this is your voice,
Fair enough.
don't want staff filter
Okay.
right through, so I would
Fair
make
enough.
that recommendation, but.
And as the public involvement coordinator, this is Coley, I do respond to her,
You do.
but I mean, I don't,
It's,
it's a thank you for your mess. I do that to everybody who's.
Oh,
submitted
sure,
public
sure,
comment.
sure, but that's not the same as hearing from us. And I guess I'm trying to figure out how do we get her that response with the information? You took the time to research the data and provide the information. Would you like to draft a letter of response for us to approve at our next?
No, ma'am, because it's in our bylaws that we are supposed to get these public comments. So if we get them, what are you supposed to do with them? Just drop them?
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
We don't need a letter, we just need to act on it. When we get public comments, we just need to answer them. As
Well,
a committee.
I think
They're coming to us.
what she's talking about is a formal answer.
How does she know you've answered?
Oh, because I'm gonna email her everything.
Oh.
No, I'm saying, no, everything that I have, I'm going to email her so she can have an understanding of this is what.
Well, and I think what she's proposing is that we make what you're going to send her our formal reply. Is that
Yes,
kind of?
yes, because I don't feel that, this is, again, that's too many years of sitting in an elected official office. I don't feel anybody should be speaking unilaterally from this committee. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So whatever is sent to her as a response to her comment to this committee needs to be approved by everyone.
So basically take what she said and just put a CTAC letter.
Now, if she chooses a member of the committee to.
But she
address
didn't.
this
But she didn't.
As a member of the committee, and she should be allowed to do that. It doesn't need everyone else's approval. If she, as long as she.
I think what the discussion here though is that you are gonna have more public buy-in if we have official response to public comment. While I mean, I have to admire the work you put into this, because I know you're a very busy person to put the additional work in. I applaud you. But I feel like to try and take the point of view of someone who's making a public comment, there's a difference between, and I think this is the point you're trying to make, there's a difference between a reply that is from a single member of the committee versus a reply from the full committee.
let's ask the question. Tony may not want to do this. Which body did Jane Leeds send her letter to? Do you know, or was it just a FAMPO general?
She specifically said the policy committee, but she also said to all of the committees, yes.
So it wasn't specific to us, then it
Well-
was to the policy committee.
Yeah, so she wrote, I mean, I can pull up my emails, but.
What specifically to your committee?
So could we ask policy committee to respond? Is that kind of stepping over or?
You can.
It's gonna take a while.
So I have a
Policy.
question,
Yeah.
if I may have another question. What is the policy committee and tax committee and our committee? What's in our bylaws about response? Because I think we have.
I'm not aware of anything.
Then I'm gonna ask that we put something in our bylaws stating that we should address and answer any public comment that comes to us. And it should not matter which committee member gets it, someone needs to respond.
There's a public, I mean, you already have a communication document.
If I could just add a little bit of discussion, maybe a little devil's advocate here. There's a lot of strength in, I'm sorry,
Tamara.
in Tamara's personal story and the personal touch that she put on this response that she's not gonna get from a form letter from a council or a committee, right? When you start writing by committee, then it's gonna just become boilerplate. Thank you, no offense to you, it's your job, but thank you for reaching out. We're gonna work on that really hard.
You lose the soul of it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think
It's watered
there's,
down.
at least it deserves consideration as to whether we want to approach these kinds of responses from a personal position, as we are advisory, right?
Right.
We're not not an elected official. We're advisory, so we are people with stories.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the approach that we want to take and decide to take as a group, or maybe we, like Tamara suggested, we address all the comments that come in some way, and then as we can, provide a more personal response.
Yes,
I'm,
yeah.
I'm really fascinated by this discussion, actually. My first response was internally, I was rolling my eyes thinking, oh God, this could go horribly wrong. But actually, I'm fascinated by this discussion because I'm from a different continent where we also have public comment. And we do it really badly over there. And in my opinion, it's done not all that well over here either. So I think we all stand to learn. It would be fascinating for me to see if you all hammered out a draft policy. And I don't mean a 25-page thing. I mean a one-pager, right? If the public writes to FAMPO, what should FAMPO do? Maybe you write a one-pager between you and send it to the policy committee and say, here's some food for thought. Why don't you respond to really detailed public comments by doing X? What's X? I don't know. I don't, as I'm both the FAMPO administrator, but I'm also like an immigrant. So I kind of look at this from the outside and I scratch my head and I go, this is as bad as we do in South Africa. It's not very good, right? Because what happens is that the way it works is public throw their comments at elected officials and hope something sticks. And that's about the methodology, right? And that's not very useful. And what you're trying to do is quite laudable because you're saying, hey, wait, some of your information, member of the public, isn't all correct. I sympathize with your feeling, but here's some more facts, right? So that's a way to respond. And we as a staff, we've not told anyone this, but we as a staff have been thinking about this particular letter because it provokes us too, right? And we as a staff have got a different role to you. So we don't respond to the detailed policy issues because we're not the policy committee. And it would be wrong of us as a staff to start commenting on whether or not we need light rail or whether the buses are clean, or it's not our job. So we do the necessary. We give an initial, the boilerplate response. Thank you for your letter. Ollie responds, you've been heard. We'll read your letter out of the policy committee. We'll put it in the pack for the different committees. We're doing that part of it. But what's the other part of it? And it doesn't seem like there is another part. Now, I'm just talking as an individual, right? But if you guys put together a one-pager that says, hey, policy committee, how about we do the following 3 things every time we get a letter? I don't know what those 3 things should be, but it might provoke a better way of dealing with this than we do now. And what we do now is what everybody does, right? We're not doing anything unusual. We're doing what everyone does. Maybe what everyone does is to improve a little. And I don't know what that looks like. You sending your letter to her is fine, right? You're an individual. You're free to put your individual comments to her. If you guys want to respond as a group, it's going to shift from all the personnel to the boilerplate. That's just the nature of life. Maybe you want to think about it and next month come back with, I mean, you could put an item on the agenda, discussion about public input, right? As an agenda item, and you think about a good response. Staff's not going to give it to you because that's not our job. We'll listen to you and maybe you come up with those 3 points and then we can just draft it into a thing for the policy. That's a fault.
So here's what I suggest, and I'll get to you in a sec. I definitely am on board with putting that as an agenda item, is discussion of a suggestion to policy committee regarding public comment. That said, since staff is not gonna provide us with options, do we want to designate some people with ideas to come back with ideas next meeting and say like,
My
so
boss is here.
Ruby'd like to come up with some ideas? Okay, do we have anyone else just to have some diversity of ideas?
I just have a question, Ms. Alice, just make sure that I'm not saying, didn't the policy committee already make comments about the the comments that coming in?
Yes.
So we did
That's
just,
what I wanted.
like
Yeah.
last meeting, we had a conversation about this. Or not last meeting, my last meeting, sorry. Last November, we had a whole conversation about this because they wanted to shorten the public comment period. And they wanted to make it so that staff were only reading summaries of emails sent in. And we had a discussion in committee about how, it was a close vote, actually. But the close vote, the majority of the close vote felt that the reducing emails to just a summary would not get the intention of the public truly conveyed. And that while we understood that, you know, especially in a controversial issue where you might have, you know, say, I don't know, 20 emails, and then your public comment period is half your agenda. At the same time, people have a right to be heard. If you don't want to spend your Wednesday nights listening to people talk about things that you might not necessarily agree with, probably shouldn't be in public service. And so I think that the idea of discussing a response to public service is a continuation of where we were in November. And so I think it's a discussion worth having, but my question is coming up with a structure. I'm personally perfectly fine with you coming up with some things, but for a diversity of ideas.
Yep.
Does anyone else want to bring something to the table next month? Yes.
I got a question about, at the beginning of the meeting, you asked for public comments. Did you say that you have 3 minutes per person? What's the difference between public comments and reading, letters or
We
emails?
also time those so that the end of the.
Aren't they the same thing?
Yes, essentially, yes.
So why shouldn't they also be limited to 3 minutes?
They are.
They were.
They are.
That's what they have done.
So like he tried to read her letter and he couldn't get through the whole letter and he said, okay, I have to stop here.
Yes, the rule that we recommended against in November was switching it to, I think it was like a 1-minute summary or something. It was a summary,
Just a paragraph summary.
paragraph summary, which it's been a long few months. Which we felt you're filtering the voice, you're filtering the voice of the public through staff, which, to be fair, love staff. You guys do a great job, but it's still a filter.
The initial discussion was to completely remove it, and if there's written comment, it just is stapled at the end.
Right,
Right, and we felt
that was kind of like try to walk back some of the conversation, because I would say particularly staff realizes folks have jobs or other commitments that if they're in public service or whatnot, that making that 8 or 6 o'clock or 7:30 meeting, by the nature of their commitments to other higher things, cannot physically be there, and therefore their voice, even if they submit a letter ahead of time, would be limited compared to those who could make that physical location at one time.
I guess I was questioning it by if this person, what you read, if she had come in, she would not have had the opportunity to say all this. She would have only had 3 minutes.
She still only had 3 minutes. They cut off the letter and didn't
Yeah.
finish reading it.
Actually, longer than
But
that.
you just.
Tamara took the time though. She took her own time and used
So-
privileges.
The letter itself, you read the letter itself, I timed myself when I read it, and I also had someone read the letter time. It was exactly 6 minutes. That's double the time.
Even when Coley read it out loud,
A few extra
to
minutes.
finish the paragraph that they were on, so it's really gave them like 3 minutes and 20 seconds. I think that's important.
But the point is, the person took the time to, like you said, whether they physically come in or whether they write it, they 3 minutes, whether you're reading it or whether you're speaking it, up to that point, you get to share your piece.
Yes, I'm sorry, Al has been waiting.
Yes, the 6 minutes that it would have taken to have actually read it was definitely cut, and that was appropriate. However, they also had a physical copy of the letter that was presented to them, so they all had the opportunity to do it. And at that November policy meeting, when the policy committee was kind of all set to put just all correspondence into their packet and not to address it, and then it became that they were going to read the shortened version of it. But because of the presentation that you made when you spoke at public comment, that was when all of a sudden they started to rethink everything and ultimately decided that they were going to allow anything to be spoken about for the full 3 minutes.
Yeah, they ended up putting a total cap of 30 minutes. And on public comment of a total cap of 30 minutes, so that to address the concerns of like those meetings go long. Like I realize it's almost 8 now and we're trying to, and it's Valentine's Day, but like their meetings go long. Yes.
Just a point of clarification, I looked at my email and it was addressed to CTAC and any other FAMPO.
Okay.
Okay, so it is directly addressed to us.
So if I-
Yes.
I'm sorry, because I don't know, I just asked for a little bit more. The thing is, we are the citizens' transportation.
That's right.
And we're not acting like the citizens.
Hmm.
That's the biggest thing. When I get on the bus, when I go out, you guys know I'm a travel trainer. And a lot of people feel they're not being heard because who wants to write a letter and it's going, trash 13. So the thing is, we are their voices. They can't get here. Most of the people that I service are handicapped people. They can't get the bus and they get the bus. Got a bus stop out here, but the bus service stops at a certain time. So be that person that can't get here, but have a voice and want a voice. And I take my time to write the letter and you don't even acknowledge that I said anything except to say, we have this letter and I'm gonna read it. It gives us more weight and validity as a unit when we answer letters, express their concerns. And I just don't feel that we on these committees or any of these committees are doing it. We need to do it because we want the public comment, because we want to give the people what they want. My personal wheelchair could care less about a trail. I'm short and chubby. I don't care about a bike, but I do care about getting on the buses and going to work and enjoying my quality of life. And we just have to become those people now to improve. How often do we talk about Fred Transit and the safety of the bus stops and where it goes? And how often do we talk about that? We don't. We don't talk about transit deserts and how to fix those. Those are the things that should be addressed by us because that is a part of transportation.
So the question to me becomes, obviously some of that can be addressed by our own initiatives, which you've shown. But what do we make functional for the committee?
Just answer public comments. I'd just be happy if we just
Answer
answer public comments so that people feel like they have their voices.
Okay, so do we want to discuss this, put this on the agenda for next meeting? On the agenda for next meeting, Ruby will bring us some ideas. If anyone else wants to bring ideas too, again, this is not to discount your ideas, just thinking about diversity of ideas.
Collaborative.
Exactly. And maybe we can take bits and pieces from everyone. I'll try to think this stuff myself. In fact, let me write that down.
Just one comment.
Yeah.
Some public comments are, I want you to do this thing, but FAMPO has no authority to do that thing.
That's right.
And so one of the things you have to sort out is the things that the person wants, how many of these can FAMPO actually address, or is there somebody else? We've done that in the past. Former chairman of the CTAC, we received a letter asking for transit in Caroline County. And we made the suggestion to the chairman of the CTAC that the chairman writes a letter to attach to that letter we received to Caroline County to say, dear Caroline County, we can't forcibly put transit in your county, but these are people in your county that want transit. So here is there's concerns, please will you address them? So that is one response, for example. So not everything that comes in a letter can we even fix, and you're going sort of the right direction. by
Yes,
saying,
by
hey,
explaining.
some of this we can't fix, some of this we could perhaps fix, and some of this we can absolutely do something about. And it's those ranges you've got, and the trouble with it is doing that work on every letter is time consuming. And so eventually I think the reason why public comment starts to get shortened and whatever is no one has the time to sort all that out and give a detailed response to every letter or every verbal comment, because it's time consuming to do. So part of the response you have to think about is, okay, now who will have enough time to do this? And to what level do we want to do this? And how much time have we got to do this? All of those things you have to think about, as well as, are we the right forum for this particular, like, we cannot introduce infrastructure in somebody else's county. We don't have that authority. So if they want that, we can't.
But we know, everybody here knows somebody who can.
Yeah.
People just want to be educated.
Sure.
They just want to be educated. They want to know, who do I need to talk to? That's it. And everybody here knows somebody that can be pointed in that right direction.
So just to, the gentleman's point,
Yeah.
Ian, thank you. I've been writing some notes, but if it may help to establish even a baseline of ground rules or framework that we would like to bring our comments in next time.
Yeah.
I have 2 points for that. One, does staff have any data on incoming comments over the last 12 months? In terms of frequency from the same authors, whether they were verbal in person or written. You know, that kind of, I'm not looking for drastic detail, but what I'm thinking is, like Ian said, you know, kind of a tiered approach, right? Like, have they written in once? Like, so a lot of people just write because they're mad and that's it. Now it's out of my head, it's out of my system. I don't care. I don't ever want to hear from these people. I just wrote what I needed to say and now it's done. And then there's this lady, I guess, has written multiple times, right? So certainly.
Hey, I know Rupert, because Rupert came to every one of our meetings and made comment.
So I think something to that effect.
I think you
a
make a
tiered,
valid
a
point,
tiered
because the
approach.
person that is consistently coming and making comment genuinely is looking for some form of acknowledgement that you've heard.
Right.
Because right now I feel like I have to keep telling you.
My question, what I'm trying to figure out, and we'll figure this out next month, is how to quantify that. To make it objective so that it's not, so that you can't, because what you want is that it continues. And it's not just the judgment of who's on the committee at the time, but that there is a quantifiable way to do that. So that's something we're gonna have to tackle for next time.
Awesome.
Okay.
And if I could just add, and Coley, if you have anything you want to add, but I should do this work. Homework, FAMPO does have its community engagement and equity plan up that kind of defines how FAMPO as an entity responds to a lot of that. So if you have the time, take a look at that.
All right, do we have any further public comment or further comment?
Just to note that First Goat is going to be speaking at our next
Okay,
CTAC.
oh, great,
Yep. Gonna give us
big update. We're expecting something?
transportation strategic plan on this.
Okay. Cool. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
I
Aye. Opposed? All right. Happy Valentine's Day, folks.